which is the heart of a mature disciple. And the heart of a mature disciple is within the heart of a mature disciple is cultivated certain virtues, and the virtues that we are going to be focusing on in this particular section as we look at the heart of a disciple, those virtues are found in First Corinthians chapter 13 verse 13. And I'm going to ask someone if you would make your way to First Corinthians chapter 13 verse 13 and read that for us this evening. First Corinthians chapter 13 verse 13. You can find it, you can unmute, and you can read that for us.
I got it.
All right, go right ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I just hit the wrong thing. Okay. So now faith, hope, and love abide. These three, but the greatest of these is love.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. And
Yeah.
so First Corinthians chapter 13 is is what's known as the love chapter. That's where the apostle Paul provides some of the characteristics for love, and provides some demonstration there within the text about what true love is. And he closes out that section by talking about three very important virtues in the life of a believer. And those are the three virtues that we are going to be learning about, that we're going to be looking at and learning about here over the coming weeks, as we seek to develop the hearts of mature disciples. And again, mature disciples cultivate in their hearts the virtues of First Corinthians chapter 13 verse 13, which of course is faith, hope, and love. And so, excuse me. So we are going to, of course, begin at the top of that list. And tonight we are going to talk about the virtue of faith. And we're going to begin talking about the virtue of faith by talking about the essence of faith. The essence of faith. And if someone would go ahead and start making your way over to Hebrews chapter 11, Hebrews chapter 11, and we're going to start off by looking at verse 1 of Hebrews chapter 11. And once you get it, you can unmute and you can read for us there. Hebrews chapter 11. I hear the proverbial pages turning
I got it.
and the scroll bar rolling.
Okay.
All right, so I guess Karen is the only person that brought their Bible to Bible study tonight, so thanks, Karen.
No, I was about to
I
unmute
have it.
and
I
say,
have it
She was
too.
quicker than me. I'll be
Y'all
ready next time.
y'all know y'all can't play around with deuces, man. Deuces don't play no games when it comes to
$50 a
button.
month. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Okay.
All right, go
Wait a
ahead.
minute.
Go ahead, Karen. Hebrews
Okay.
11:1.
Huh?
Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1.
Oh, chapter 11.
All
My
right,
bad,
somebody
y'all.
somebody else that has
Now
Hebrews
faith is
chapter 11, verse
confident.
1.
I got it. I got it.
Oh God.
Hebrews 11, verse 1. Now, faith is what? What are we doing?
Go ahead, Karen.
Okay. Hebrews 11, 1. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen.
Thank you,
For,
Karen.
yeah.
That's just verse 1. Does anybody
Oh,
else
good.
have a different version? Does
I don't
anybody
understand.
have a different version? So you read from the
I
English
have the
Standard Version.
NIV.
Thank you, Courtney. Go ahead and read that from the NIV,
Oh man,
please.
I just clicked up. Hold on.
I have it.
On my phone. Okay, here we go. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see.
Gotcha. All right.
Ooh.
So we got assurance and conviction. We got confidence and assurance. Anybody else have a different version that utilizes any different descriptors there?
Um, I have one. Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see.
Read that one more time, Ashley.
Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see.
Sure and certain. Good stuff. Good stuff. So when we talk about the essence of faith, faith is, as identified in the scripture, can be identified or can be communicated by it being the substance or the confidence of the things that we hope for, and it also identified as the evidence or the assurance of things that we don't see. So somebody, what does that mean to you when you read Hebrews 11:1? How does that speak to you? What does that speak to you?
It's an
It's
ultimate compliment
basically
to have faith until it's like having grace. It's kind of like they go hand in hand for me.
Hmm.
Having that pure original faith that is something so beautiful that you could never take a picture of it.
I'm sorry, I missed the question. What was the question, Coach?
What does Hebrews 11:1 say to you?
Oh,
Janae, you were going to say something.
faith for me is just reading that is just simply knowing already past things that I've gone through. I know that God has something in store for me and he's not done with me. So I might not be able to see it at the time, but I know it's going to happen.
Hmm.
But it's trusting and believing in him.
All right, good stuff. Thank you. Anybody else? What does Hebrews 11:1 say to you?
okay.
I would start. Um, I would say that we only have that hope and that confidence and that assurance because of who the object of our faith is. That's what sticks out to me. That we can have faith in a lot of things, a lot of people. However, we only can have assured, confident faith as believers because our faith is in Christ. It's because of who our faith is in. So that's my piece on that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It sounded like somebody else was getting ready to say something as well.
It was me.
Oh, yes. Go ahead, Ashley.
Um, I like the way that um, the Message Bible reads that, and it says that the fundamental fact of existence is that this trust in God, this faith, is the firm foundation under everything that makes life worth living. And I guess for me, um, faith. I mean, I know a lot of people kind of look at life, through a kind of like a scientific kind of lens as far as like proof and um things like that. But when you really do take a step back and you really think about a lot of the stuff, even from a scientific point of view, um, God is everywhere in that. He's literally in everything. Um, and it's really hard. It's really hard, honestly, not to operate in faith because you do it all the time, a lot of the times without even thinking about it.
Hmm.
So for me, it really is becoming very apparent that um, faith is just a way of living every day to day life, and just being more aware of it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And I appreciate you sharing that. I also appreciate you uh, jumping ahead and digging into the Message Bible version uh, of the lesson. Um, but no, but that's good. That's a great point of reference, and an excellent piece to think about, and a way to look at it and consider it, especially within the context of the lesson tonight. Um, I want to read something for you all. You know, everybody, when you join Church on Purpose, if you haven't already, you should have, and I need to know so that we can make sure we get it to you. But everybody that joins Church on Purpose gets a kingdom kit, and within that kingdom kit is a copy of Rediscovering Faith by Dr. Miles Monroe, which really helps to kind of serve as the theological lens through which we approach faith. Um, and you also receive a copy of the English Standard Version Study Bible, and the Study Bible um, is so great because, you know, as you are reading the Word, it really provides wraparound support for being able to understand and internalize concepts. And in Hebrews 11:1 in your English Standard Version Study Bible, this is the textual notes that are added for this particular verse. It's such a short verse, but it has really heavy meaning for our understanding, application, and interpretation of faith. It says, you know, for the word assurance, that's the Greek word hypostasis, which is translated as confidence. And then when it talks about the conviction of things not seen, it says by defining faith, pistis, as assurance and conviction, the author indicates that biblical faith is not a vague hope that's grounded in the imaginary, wishful thinking. Instead, faith is a settled confidence that something in the future, something that is not yet seen but has been promised by God, will actually come to pass because God will bring it about. Thus, biblical faith is not blind trust in the face of contrary evidence, not an unknowing not an unknowable leap in the dark. Rather, biblical faith is a confident trust in the eternal God who is all powerful, infinitely wise, eternally trustworthy, the God who has revealed himself in his word and in the person of Jesus Christ, whose promises have proven true from generation to generation, and who will never leave nor forsake his own. Such faith in the unseen realities of God is emphasized throughout chapter 11 and has provided confidence and assurance to all who receive Christ as their Lord and Savior. So before I offer my commentary on that, somebody tell me what that makes you think about when you heard what I just read. What are some things floating through your mind?
I'll go, coach, because I want to get my participation points. No.
You ain't know I was keeping track tonight. I still owe Karen and Courtney a quarter too. So
There you go, quarters. No, so what I think about when you read that passage from the English Standard Version, I think of vision. You know, when you have certain visions that are like really vivid, and it's God behind it, it's like what you're saying, like you're already promised, you know, those visions of you know, whatever that purpose is in life that you're supposed to make the biggest impact in. It's like his promise that's, you know, being fulfilled for you, you know, in the near future. So
hmm
that's what I think about vision that came to mind.
good stuff. Thank you. One more
Yeah.
person. You know what comes through your mind when you hear that?
Um, Faith is a settled thing promised by God. That is, like Ashley said, something important that we do and we don't even realize we do it. We have more faith than we give ourselves credit for having.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing, Karen. Thank you for caring and sharing, Karen. I'm done. Um, Yeah, when we think about faith, there are multiple tiers to this thing, because um, people all around the world have faith, even people that claim to not have faith in a higher power. Um, Everybody has some kind of faith. I venture to say that all of us right now are, I won't assume, most of us right now are probably either sitting down or laying down on something. And we demonstrated faith in the moment that we shifted the weight of our body out of balance and trusted that when our body touched that thing, that seat, that bed, that couch, or whatever it was, we trusted that it was not only going to be there, but that it was going to be able to support us and we weren't going to fall on the floor. um we have a, because of our experiences in life, we have a settled confidence in a chair's ability to support us and to support our weight and to keep us up. um some of us are driving vehicles that give us a settled confidence. Others of us are driving vehicles that give us somewhat confidence. we Some of us get in the car and we don't have a care or a concern that we're going to get to where it is we're trying to go. You know, we're not thinking about the car's ability to be able to get us there. But others of us get in cars and there are more lights on the dash than we have on our Christmas tree, and we don't, and we hope, and and oftentimes pray that we will arrive at our destination without any kind of impedance. And um and I think that, that's it's a real shallow representation of kind of what you all have shared. um Everybody has some kind of faith in something, but, to Quentin's point, it is the faith of the believer, it is the faith of the kingdom citizen that is unique because of who our faith is in. um because of who our faith is in, we should have a different level of confidence and assurance, because the evidence has been provided by the one who is the substance of our faith. When we've talked over the last couple of weeks just about, the things that God has called us to do, and being able to trust him to do what he's telling us to do and calling us to do, and and moving into those spaces, and we have faith in those moments. um not just hope. We don't hope that things work out when we respond in obedience to God. We have faith that things will work out, because our confidence is in the fact that what he is asking us to do, he has already planned out, that he has already executed, that it has already happened within the concept of time. We just haven't arrived at the moment at which it is happening yet. But we have supreme and full and settled confidence, because if God is going to do it, then we can trust that it is going to happen. If God is calling us to do it and asking us to do it, then we can believe that it is going to happen, and we can live with the assurance that it is going to happen. When we put our faith in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, although none of us had the opportunity to shake his hand when he was walking this earth as a man, our faith gives us supreme confidence that at the end of all of this, that when we die, we transition into eternity with him. And we'll get into that a little bit further in our lesson. um but faith is so much more than, as the as the notes said, more than blind trust in the face of contrary evidence. No, the faith that we have is very much so evidence based. It is not only based on what God has done for us, but it is also based on what God has done for others. It is based on what we know about God and who God to be. We have to live like that, and that's what it means to live by faith. to take what you know about God and who you know God to be, and then live your life with the assurance and the confidence that God is going to continue to be who you know him to be, and that God is going to continue to do what you know he does. And that you know that if he is a God that makes promises that he fulfills, then he is going to do what he said he's going to do. And that's why in Hebrews chapter 11 it starts listing all of these people who put their faith in God, and gives us the evidence through their lives that when we trust God, when we put our faith in God, he follows through and brings to pass what it is not yet seen. Um, it is, uh, it's like for actually everybody on the line in some way, shape, or form has a little kid running around somewhere, and that's pretty cool. But it's like with with little children. A lot of times we use the example of of faith and of trust of a child who maybe a child who can't yet talk but will walk up to an adult with their arms up in the air, um and that moment is a demonstration of faith in that adult, because that child enters their space not hoping that that adult is going to pick them up, but knowing that that adult is going to pick them up. And if the adult doesn't pick them up, then they start whining, they start fussing, because they want you to know that you are going to pick them up. That is their full expectation coming to you, that you are going to pick them up. It's like David used to do it a lot when he was smaller. Um Jojo does it a lot now. Interestingly enough, Jada never did it that much. But both David and Joseph like to jump off things. And Matter of fact, Jada does do it a lot, but she doesn't jump into my arms. She likes to jump on my back without me knowing. She'll just run and randomly jump on my back. But David and Joseph would stand, on the stairs or on the edge of the bed or something like that, and they would see me coming, and without me indicating to them in any way, shape, or form that I want them to jump, I'm not going over there with my hands out, I'm not saying anything to them, but as I would get closer to them, they would just jump off of whatever they were on. And they would jump in full confidence, in settled confidence that daddy was going to catch them. They weren't jumping into the fog and hoping that something was going to catch them on the other side. They jumped with the knowledge and the confidence in their history with me, that assured them that if they jumped, I was going to catch them. And so they jumped with confidence. And see, for us, we move and we navigate this life, not jumping in blind faith. We don't this is funny, man. If y'all knew what was going on behind the scenes in everybody's life at Church on Purpose, this would be hilarious. But we don't, Janae and I didn't leave Virginia and leave family and leave jobs and leave positions there and jump into this journey called Church on Purpose in blind faith. There was settled confidence that the vision that God had dropped in my heart was going to be manifested. And so it wasn't a man, we gonna jump out here and we sure hope this works. It wasn't no we hope this work. It was like, this has to work. This is going to work, because this is his vision to build his church. And if God is going to be, if this is God's vision, that God is responsible for making sure that his vision comes to pass. And that's why, as believers, we don't make random fly by night decisions. But we are very intentional about when we feel the urgings and the callings and the promptings of God to do something that is out of the ordinary. whether that is leaving a job or going back to school or entering a relationship or identifying a church to commit to, and responding to the call of God on your life and beginning to walk in your purpose. Like, we don't do those things haphazardly. We don't get an idea and just jump into it in blind faith hoping that it works out. When we make those kind of steps, when we make those kind of commitments, when we put our faith in God and what God is asking us to do, we do so with settled confidence that, even if we don't know what it's going to look like, we know that it is going to look like something. And that something that it is going to look like is something that has been designed and developed by God, because we are his children. And when we respond to his command, he always looks out for us, always takes care of us. And oftentimes, because we are limited in our sight, and we'll get to that later on in the lesson as well, because we are limited in our sight, our confidence has to be in him. Because if our confidence was in what we see, we wouldn't have confidence to do anything. Because confidence doesn't come from what we see. Confidence comes from what we know and who we know God to be, and the evidence that he has provided through his faithfulness in our lives, previously, and through some other sources. But we'll get to the source of faith in just a moment. So faith is the substance. It is the confidence of things that we hope for. It is the evidence, the conviction, the assurance of things that we don't yet see. And this is why we are charged and challenged to live our lives in faith. Somebody turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 5. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. Because the essence of faith is not just as that substance and that confidence and that evidence and that assurance, but the essence of faith is also as the foundation, um the foundation of our lives. um Somebody, we're gonna give Karen's vocal cords a break.
All right. You said 5:7.
2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7.
It says, "For we walk by faith, not by sight."
For we walk by faith, not by sight. We walk, we live by faith, not by what we see. And as believers, for those of you who have had the opportunity to be a part of some of our previous book study Bible studies, whether that is God's big idea, or the most important person on earth, or the principle and power of authority, the principle and power of kingdom citizenship. um what was the other one? um yeah, there was another one. I can't think of it right now. But if you've been a part of any of those studies, then you know that um we of course believe, as as established in the word, that that God, who exists in the invisible, um being the good king that he is, and having filled up the vast expanse of the invisible with his kingdom and with his glory, did what good kings do. He sought to expand his kingdom. And so when you've already filled up the invisible, the only place to expand to is to create this thing called the visible, and then to begin expanding your kingdom there. And so in Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, God says, let there be light. Well, in the beginning, uh, yeah, y'all know what I'm talking about. God says, let there be light, and poof, the visible realm comes into being. But the visible realm, even though it is our dwelling place, when we become citizens in God's kingdom, of course, we become citizens of a new country, our home country, which is the invisible country of heaven. And so the invisible serves as the foundation and the guard and the guide for our lives. And so, as kingdom citizens whose home country is the invisible, We live our lives not according to and not limited to the visible, but we live it according to how things operate and how things function in the invisible, which is why we walk by faith in what is not seen instead of by sight, which is what we can see. We don't depend simply on what we can see as the to serve as the foundation for our lives, but our lives are rooted in our lives are guided by what is unseen. It is our faith in God, our faith in his kingdom and his governance and his laws and his values and his virtues and his plans and his strategy and his intentionality and who he is and his and what he is doing in our lives now and what he is doing in the vast expanse of the human timeline, the timeline of humanity. Um, we don't walk by what we see. We walk by faith. Again, we walk each day in that settled confidence that no matter where we go and no matter what we do, the king of the universe has our back. No matter where we have to go, no matter what conversations we have to have, no matter what we are asked to do in terms of utilizing our gifts and serving others, we do so with the assurance, the settled confidence that God is with us, and that if we are asked to do it, there's a reason why we're asked to do it, even if we don't understand that today. This thing called faith. We read about in James chapter 1 verse 3, and we'll get to that scripture a little bit later. But faith can be, faith has different attributes as well. It can be tested. Um, Faith is something that can be weak, which also means that it can be strong. In Romans 14 and 1, uh Paul says, as for the one who is weak in faith, welcome him, but not to quarrel over opinions. And also in Matthew chapter 17, Jesus himself talks about how faith can be weak. In Matthew 17 verse 20, Jesus says, he says to them, because of your little faith, or your weak faith. For truly I say to you, if you have faith like the grain of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. Faith can be weak and faith can be strong. Obviously, the goal and the objective for all of us is to have a strong faith, a strong and settled confidence in who God is and in what he desires to do in our lives. So let me pause right there and give you opportunity to unmute and just kind of share what's on your mind, what's going through your mind right now. What kind of things are popping up as you are dialoguing with the Holy Spirit during this time. So give me three people that will share. Go ahead, Karen.
I gotta go. So I was reading at work today, um, Matthew 13:31 about the mustard seed, and I think you've read that before. It's really significant, and I remember Priscilla doing a presentation about the mustard seed. It's very significant. It's very important because it talked about planting good seed in good soil. It talked about a mustard seed is so tiny, but yet so powerful. It's amazing pulling faith into that. You have faith in what you're going to grow, and you have faith that what you're going to grow is going to prosper and be pleasing to God. That's what I thought about.
Thank you for sharing. Two more people. What's on your mind right now? What's going through your mind right now as we're talking about the essence of faith?
I'll go. Um, I think what has hit me so far out of everything that you just said, was just really kind of that last part. Um, there's a reason why. That's what you said. There's a reason why we are asked to do it, even if we don't understand it today. That's why it's called faith. And I think for me, that hit so hard because um, I'm I struggle with not understanding, wanting to know, and I need to know, and why is it not happening this way? And just trusting God, period. And that has been a struggle for me. I feel like since I really started walking with God. But when you said that's why it's called faith, that was powerful because I feel like anything that you're gonna do moving forward in your walk with God after you decide to give your life to Him, really walk this journey out. If you don't choose to kind of have the mindset of faith or just trust in the fact that God said that He was going to do something, whether you understand it in that moment or it sounds crazy to you or not, it's just your best bet most of the times is just to go ahead on and do what it was that you felt like He was leading you to do or told you to do, even if it makes absolutely no sense in the moment. And when I reflect back over my journey just within the last past year, I could think of maybe like 2 or 3 things off the top of my head where I'm like, Lord, this makes absolutely no sense. And you're telling me to trust you, basically telling me to jump off a bridge right now and you're going to catch me. And I'm looking at it from the natural, like, how is this going to work? So that's kind of what was going through my head and just kind of replaying after you said it. Because I feel like that's probably the truest thing. If you haven't said anything that was facts so far this night, that part, that's true.
I appreciate that. Uh, and I think what's interesting, one, of course, you are not alone in the desire to know. When God asks us to do anything, um, that is that is beyond our comfort zone, there is always a desire to know. And that's part of this inherent desire for self-preservation. you know before I agree to walk down a dark alley where I can't see nothing, I want to know what's down there. Because I want to know if I need to take some weapons. I need to know if I need to lace up my shoes.
Right.
I need to know if I need to walk gingerly because I got on church shoes with slick bottoms, and the pavement is wet. Like, knowing helps us to prepare, and preparing helps us to preserve ourselves. And that's why when God asks us to do things that are outside of our comfort zone, why then the request is followed by a whole bunch of questions about how this is going to work. It's not always a demonstration of a lack of faith, but um uh I believe where God wants us to be is in a place where we realize that when He asks us to do something, in that moment, we know everything that we need to know. And what we know doesn't even relate to the plan. It doesn't even relate to what He's asking us to do. It doesn't relate to when it's going to happen, where it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, who it's going to happen with. What we know enough without knowing any of those things, because we know who He is. And that is what faith is. It's not gaining confidence in what is being asked of us because we know the details of the plan. It is having confidence in what is being asked of us because we know the character of the one who is asking us. And that being enough,
Yes,
knowing
yes.
that regardless of what the plan looks like, regardless of how many steps the plan has, regardless of where the plan takes us, all of that is irrelevant because we trust the one that is asking us to work it out. And if we get to the point to where all of our trust and all of our faith is in him, none of that other stuff matters. When he asked us to do it, we like, all right, you're not gonna ask me to do anything that's gonna be to my ultimate detriment. So I don't understand it. I don't get it, but I'm finna do it because I trust you.
I
And
had a
there, you know,
question. Oh, I'm sorry, Coach. Keep going.
no, go ahead.
Um, just to kind of like add to what you were saying, or more or less ask a question as far as what you were saying. And maybe you can tell me, like, maybe for your, like, for you, um, and I don't know, maybe I don't know if you ever like really fully reached that point, but I'm curious, like, do you ever feel like you got to a place or a point, or do you believe that we'll ever get to a point or a place where um we don't do that? Like, we don't question we don't question what God is telling us in the moment.
It's a
Like,
great question.
I think often about, and became one of my favorite kind of stories in the Bible, was when the Lord um spoke with the, I don't know if I'm saying that right, the centurion or the
The
officer.
centurion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um and in that moment, like, he didn't think about it, he didn't question it, he didn't do any of that. When God said what he was gonna do, and he said it, that was it. That was the end of it. In the story, at least that's the way that they made it seem, that
Mm-hmm.
when he said it, he spoke and said what it was that he had to say. There was no afterthought. There was,
Mm-hmm.
okay, Lord said, okay, that was it. There's nothing after that. And it's just like, I often wonder what kind of life I could live or lead or walk in
Mm-hmm.
if that was the kind of faith that I had on a regular basis, like every day I open my eyes type basis.
Yeah.
And it's like, do you think that's possible for us in this time and age? And, just, I don't know. I don't know if that's making sense, but
Yep. Makes sense.
um
Great question. And but there's something important to note the about the demonstration of faith for the centurion. And
mm,
what's important to note about that demonstration of faith is that demonstration of faith wasn't for him.
mm,
That demonstration of faith was for somebody else. And more often than not, it's easier for us to demonstrate faith for others than it is for ourselves because we know ourselves.
mm,
And oftentimes we don't feel deserving of, and we disqualify ourselves from the possibilities that are available. We ask God to do miraculous things in our lives, but we really don't feel justified and validated to receive miraculous things because we know what we think about and we know what we do when nobody else is around.
mm,
We know what's in our hearts, and we know our limitations, and we know our failures, at least, you know um some of us. And so we can end up struggling to feel validated as recipients of the result and the fruit of faith. And we self-sabotage ourselves because but we can have great faith for others, but when it comes to having that degree of faith for ourselves, it's far more difficult for us. One, because we know ourselves, but then two, because of this thing called self-preservation. And so to answer your question and then to tell you why, I will say no. I don't think that while we are here on this earth, we are ever going to get to that point where consistently God says move and we move without question. Um, and the reason that I say that is because I think that we are limited by our humanity. And much of our experience here in the earth is a war between the flesh and the spirit. And especially in times of crisis, um there is this super battle that's going on. And the reference point that I have for this, and the reason that I say what I do, is because of Matthew chapter 26, when, after Jesus has supped with the disciples in the upper room, and instituted communion, instituted the Lord's Supper, and he's washed the disciples' feet, and they've left the upper room, and they've gone, and they've gone out singing hymns, went into the Mount of Olives, they come into the garden, and Jesus asked the disciples to watch and pray with him. And in that moment, knowing what is coming and knowing what the Father has asked of him to do, Jesus goes off to pray. And in verse 39, he says, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." And so, even in that moment, Jesus, knowing that his death is necessary to restore the opportunity of reconnection for all of humanity, pre-Jesus, present Jesus, and post Jesus, knowing that his life is necessary, he's still asking the Father if there's another way. And that's, but then faith kicks in and says, "But not my will, your will be done." Because Jesus understands that if the Father is asking him to go about it this way, there is a reason that the Father has for him to have to experience the agony that he's about to go through. And he believes that if the Father asks him to go through this, even to death, that the Father is going to make good on his promise to raise him back to life. And so I don't know that we will ever get to the point in our lives where the Lord asks us to do something, regardless of what it is. There's simple stuff like, maybe we get really good at responding when he asks us to pray for somebody. But if the Lord, asks us to step in and put our bodies on the line in between somebody to protect somebody, part of your flesh is going to be like, "Now hold on, wait a minute, player." Is that really the Lord speaking? You'd be like the serpent in the garden. Did the Lord really say to do that? And I think that is just a part of the limitations of our flesh. That's a part of the enduring curse of sin. We are saved, but we are being saved from the impacts and the influence of sin on our lives. And there are some impacts and influence of sin that we won't get away from until we get away from sin. And we won't get away from sin until we get into eternity. And so I think it is admirable to strive for that degree of faith, and the amazing things, man, that God can do in our lives when we trust him unreservedly, when we really live with that settled confidence, and as he calls us and he asks us, being able to respond not with doubt and not with delay, but being able to respond immediately in faith and trust that what he is asking us to do has purpose and value in our lives, and is going to be fruitful in some way, shape, or form, even if it is uncomfortable or inconvenient right now. That is the goal. That is the objective. Is that going to happen every time? No. And when it does happen, don't feel bad, because a whole bunch of these people in this book that got to reap the rewards of great faith also had those same kind of moments. It is not about it's not so much about the moment where you ask the questions. It is about what you do after the moment. It is about whether or not you allow the questions and the analysis of events to paralyze you. If you get caught in the paralysis of analysis and never end up doing what God called you to do, or keep putting it off and keep putting it off and keep putting it off, because delayed obedience is the same as disobedience. You don't believe me? Come over to the Chapman house when Janae tell them kids to do something and they still sitting down watching TV. She responds the same way to them taking forever to get stuff done as she does when they don't get it done altogether. Delayed obedience is the same as disobedience. When God calls us to do something and we hem and we haw, that is the same as just saying, "No, I ain't finna do that, player." And our goal is is faith. It is to have this confidence, this supreme, unshakable, settled confidence and assurance in the one who is asking us to do what he's asking us to do. That's why it's not blind trust, because we know the one that is asking us to do it. Fam, I'm not moving halfway across the country if I don't feel like I have a good grasp of the level of care, concern, and love that God has for me. I'm not doing it. That would be crazy. And so if we are struggling in our faith, then one question that we might ask ourselves is, what do we know and believe about the one that we are putting our faith in? If we're struggling to make the move, then what aspect of God and his character and his activity do we need to better educate ourselves about? If we are afraid of being out there because we don't know what's going to happen and we don't know how the bills are going to be paid, then we might need to educate ourselves about our Jehovah Jireh, about the God who provides, and build up for ourselves a collection of stories and a collection of evidence for times that he has provided for other people. I told y'all before, when this whole idea of moving halfway across the country, moving to this place where I don't know nobody to do something for God came up, the spirit took me right back to Abraham and was like, dude, I'm not asking you to do something for the first time in human history. Like, this is what I do. And when people respond to when I ask them to do it, amazing things happen. And it was being able to reflect on not a personal experience that I had, but the experience of Abraham, the experience of my own father, who picked up our family when I was 4 years old and moved from West Virginia to Richmond, Virginia. And being able to see then how the Lord guided and directed him, and being able to lean on that example as evidence for the fact that this is what God does. And so if God is the one that is asking me to do this, and this is what he does when he asks people to do this, then I can have confidence that he's going to do it for me too. It's 7:33, so we need to wrap this up. And this is only 1/4 of our lesson tonight. She's so apparently this is going to take more than 1 week to dig into. But I know Karen had a comment, and then anybody else that has any final questions or comments before we close the stream and then prepare for our period of reflection.
So I was gonna say, with everything that we've been talking about this evening, um, the very last thing that you said, when you're talking about Matthew 17 and 20. I'm a bird and I love songs. So the song came to my mind, which was Lead Me, Guide Me. I don't know if you guys know that one because it's the old school song. Um, and it just talks about how it says, I'm gonna read the words. Lead me, oh Lord, won't you lead me? I'm tired and I need the strength and power to guide me over the darkest hours. For just open my eyes that I may see. Lead me, oh Lord, won't you lead me? And just thinking about our faith, sometimes we're always looking at what's around us. And that song just brought that to my attention. Is like, okay, when I'm weak, God is going to give me everything that I need for me to continue on. Because again, like you said, he won't say, go do this if he didn't already equip you with what you needed to know and what you needed to have during to do it. So yeah, that was it.
Thank you. Two more people. Uh, any thoughts or additional questions before we wrap up? Yeah. So, all right. If nobody else has anything else to share, then I'll leave on this note. Um, Again, actually, I appreciate you. I appreciate you asking that question because I think it gave us an opportunity to be able to kind of look at this a different way. But here's the thing, y'all. Um, we so often put ourselves in this place of like spiritual things being so confusing and confounding, and being able to live a spiritual life is so complex and complicated and all this kind of stuff. But God gives us in the visible perfect examples and parallels of how things operate in the spiritual. Perfect examples. And when we talk about, when we talk about um this thing of faith, fam, faith is again something you have been doing your entire life. From the time that you were a child, before you understood what bills were and how to make groceries, you never had a concern about where the food was coming from. Even those of you who struggled with having food on a consistent basis, up until a certain point in your life, you didn't spend all day thinking, oh no, Lord, you weren't 2 years old thinking, oh Lord, what are we gonna do for dinner? No, you ran around like a 2 year old until somebody told you to sit down, it's time to eat. And you lived in the freedom and the liberty of knowing that somebody cared enough to feed you, and that what they were going to feed you wasn't going to kill you. So you didn't have reservation when you sat down to eat what was put in front of you. You get older and you go to school and you got people teaching you that you don't even know. But even when you don't trust the people, you trust the position and the office that they have, because you grow to believe that this teacher is supposed to have your best interest at heart. And so even before you learn how much they love you, even before you are given evidence to quantify or to qualify how much they care about you as an individual student, you extend to them the faith in what they say to internalize it and then apply it. You get older and you start trusting people with your heart because you believe, even before you learn about their character truly, you believe that they're going to protect it and that they're going to love you too the way that you love them. We do all of these things, and we spend our lives putting our faith in finite people, imperfect people, broken people, and we do it over and over and over again. So let me help you if you're struggling. You do not have a problem with a capacity for faith. You don't have a problem with an ability to be able to trust and to be able to put your faith in somebody or something. That's not where the challenge is. The challenge gets back to what Quentin talked about earlier, which is the where our faith is placed. That is what we are growing through. That is what kingdom citizenship is equipping us with. That's why we come to Bible study. That's why we are in church, is to better understand the God that we have relationship with, the God that saved us, because the better we understand who he is, the better we understand his character, the better we understand his ways, the easier it is to have faith. You want to know why Jesus was able to demonstrate the faith that he did on this earth? It was because his faith was in his daddy. He already had an intimate relationship with the one that was asking him to do these things. The reason Peter was able to walk on the water is because he had built enough relationship with Jesus to believe that if Jesus is calling me to step out of this boat in the middle of a storm and walk on the water, knowing this man, having seen this man, having interacted with this man, and knowing that he cares about me, there must be something to it. You want to build your faith, build your knowledge about who God is and about what God thinks about you and about how God operates and God's ways, because within that you will find the settled confidence in the one that you're putting your faith and your trust in. The moments that we experience doubt, the moments that we struggle with being obedient is an indication of an aspect of God's character that we need to grow deeper in. If you struggling to give because you like, we don't have enough money to be able to pay these bills, then you need to dig deeper into who God is as provider. If you are struggling with health and believing him for healing, then you need to dig deeper into God as healer. If you are struggling with being set free from the bondage of sin and no longer being sucked into these bad habits and these old habits, then you need to dig deeper into who God is as deliverer and liberator. Because when we understand the one that our faith is in, we know everything that we need to know to do what he's asking us to do. Whether we know the plans, whether we know the timing, whether we know the possibilities, whether we know the obstacles, we don't need to know none of that if we know him. So for those of you that are joining us online tonight, we want to say thank you for joining us for our time of study and pray that it has been a blessing to you. Hopefully it's been a challenge to you. And we hope that you'll come back next week as we dig into apparently what has now become part 2 of the virtue of faith. Tonight we talked about the essence of faith. Next week we're going to begin talking about the source of faith, and we'll see how far we get with that lesson as well. But the final encouragement is dig deeper into the one, into an understanding and a knowledge of the one that we have put our faith in, because it doesn't take much faith in a mighty God to do mighty things. So let's believe bigger, as my good friend and brother Marvin Gilliam would say for 2021. Let's believe bigger. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Pray that you live each day on purpose.